Can you hear us on Zoom? Give me a thumbs up. I think I heard sound yes. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. We have an exciting presentation today from Jenna Deibel. She's the Oregon State Project Forestry Extension Forester, and excited to hear today. So we're going to go ahead and start with introduction, and I'm going to start on this side of the room.
Bill Booth, Sutter Fire Department.
Kevin Robinson, Columnist, Central Oregon Fireman, Sergeant.
Sherry Mullen, Witchy Creek Firewise Community Chairman.
Pointer, Eagle Crest Estates Home, HOA, Fireways Chairperson.
Carolyn Dahlberg, Tollgate Firewise Committee.
Jeff Bowler Sisters, Camp Sherman Fire District.
Lauren Street, CYC Forest Hills Project Planner.
Kyle Collins, Deschutes County Planning Department.
And Erin Kilcullen, Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District. Heather Dare, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Eric Brown, Spirit Woods.
Good morning, Nathan Garrity, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office Emergency Manager.
And Jenna Deibel, Central Oregon Extension Forester. Happy to be here today. Thanks for having me. You want to introduce yourself?
I am Megan with Central Oregon Transit.
And I'm Corinne Heiner, the Fire Adaptive Community Support Leader for Deschutes County. And Kevin is joining us online today. I think he has some updates for us. Kevin, are you ready?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'm homesick. Actually tested positive for COVID yesterday, so doing the best I can with what we have. Couple of updates. I just kind of keep it short. The biggest one right now is the fuels reduction grant. With that application is open right now until September 30th. That's the fuels reduction grant that we use discretionary funds and Oregon State Fire Marshal money. We have 125,000 available right now. It's on our natural resources website. If you need to find the application, it should be pretty easy to find. It's just a tab on the left on the natural resources website. If you have any questions about that grant, as far as what projects are eligible, or what the funding can be used for, please feel free to reach out, and I can provide that information. And then the other major update is we are hiring right now, actually, a third person in our natural resources department. That's a grants coordinator, and that application is on our Deschutes County webpage, and the application is open until September 22nd. And again, if you have any questions about that position, feel free to reach out. And that's all I have for updates at this time.
And then we also have a couple of CWPP meetings coming up in November. We're about to finish the Upper Deschutes River. So it'll be the final meeting for that. And that'll be on November 4th at 10 a.m. at the road department. If you're interested in joining us for that, just let me know, or email me. I can get you some more details if you need them. And then we also have our second meeting for the East and West CWPP. That'll be on November 25th at 10 a.m. also at the road department. So if you're interested in joining us for either, let me know. And then also, if everyone joining us online could please do your introduction in the chat for me, so that I have it for our meeting notes. Got a pretty big group online today, so that's great. Thanks for being here. And then Jenna, you are ready. I will give you the floor and take it.
No problem. I already dropped this in the chat earlier, but there's been some new folks that have joined us. I will be basing some of my presentation off of this publication that I put in the chat. And then folks who are here in person, they give you guys copies. Guys, for reference. Thank you. All right, let's get this screen shared and we can get started. All righty. There, that should be out of the way enough. All righty. Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for having me today. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Jenna Deibel. I am your new Central Oregon Extension Forester as of about 6 months ago exactly. My full title is Central Oregon Extension Forester Agent / Assistant Professor of Practice, and my region covers Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson counties and the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I'm based out of Redmond and I'm flying all over the place on any given day. And today, I would like to talk to you about a couple of things. First and foremost, who I am and what your extension forester can do for you. It's been a few years since there was an extension forester in Central Oregon. And so as I'm here building my program, I just want to remind everybody what a meaningful impact having an extension forester in your community can have. And then I would like to give you a little taste of what extension programming has to offer with one of the best publications, I would argue, to come out of Central Oregon Extension Forestry from one of my predecessors, Nicole Strong, who's actually one of my bosses now. And she wrote this publication on balancing wildlife habitat and fuels reduction, hazardous fuels reduction practices, and really shows what I think is the best of extension, where we're not telling people you can only have one thing or have another and you can't have this. We're trying to marry together goals that can coexist with one another and show people what their options are. So that's what to expect from my presentation today. So to get started, again, just a little bit about who I am. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, North Bay, north side of the Golden Gate Bridge. But I had my heart stolen by the Pacific Northwest from a young age. I probably wanted to move up here since I was still in the single digits. Knew I wanted to go to Oregon State University to their College of Forestry since I was 15 years old, and promptly went as soon as I turned 18. In their natural resources program with a focus in tourism, recreation, and adventure leadership. For all 4 summers of my program, I worked for and with the Forest Service in different capacities, either as a data technician on wilderness trails, cleaning pit toilets, as every good recreation professional does at some point, and as a wilderness ranger as well down in California. Yeah, I should mention I worked on both the east sides of Mount Hood, and I also worked down in the Stanislaus in California, north of Yosemite. During the school years, I also worked, I was an ambassador for the College of Forestry during 3 of my years in undergrad. So essentially I was a student representative for students at events, talking to prospective students and during important conversations with the university and college at large. And I was also briefly a trip leader for the Adventure Leadership Institute, leading groups on excursions into the outdoors, such as this group of international students. And so just in general, I've had a lot of experience in taking people outside for informal education and getting them stoked on the outdoors. That's what I have a lot of knowledge on and what I'm really excited about. I then moved over here for my graduate work, actually. I got my master's also from Oregon State in natural resources with a focus in policy. and I did I conducted the baseline wilderness character monitoring assessment for the Ochoco National Forest. So essentially assessing how current management and stewardship efforts were supporting existing wilderness policy and then providing management recommendations based on my findings. And that involved communicating with virtually every resource specialist on the forest whose resource had some sort of impact, value, or presence in the wilderness areas, in the 3 wilderness areas in the Ochoco's. And while I was doing that, I was also bartending at Crooked River Brewing in Prineville. So if any of you recognize me from there, I might have poured you a beer at some point. And then I also taught briefly at OSU Cascades this last winter term when they offered recreation resource management for the first time on the Cascades campus. So not only was I teaching the material, I also localized the material to best suit the needs of the Bend community and the students here. And then I got this job. And then beyond the work and nature and backpacking, which is what that bottom left photo shows, I also like to be outside on my off time as well. I've got my little family here, my partner Cedar, which is why I titled my presentation Thinking About Trees All the Time, because even if I'm off the clock, I'm still thinking about Cedar. So we're always thinking about trees. And then my cat Miso there, who started following me around on my neighborhood walks in Prineville a few years ago. I also really love cooking and really trying out new things. I grew up in a household where food is loved from my mom. So really love to cook, and I love to cook for others. And then I'm just kind of a general crafter. I realized that I don't have many pictures of my crafts, but this is one that I did a few weeks ago when I was in COVID quarantine. And it's a paper mache cardboard newspaper Kleenex lizard with lava rocks for my driveway for eyes, and he's hanging on my wall now. But I also crochet, sew, knit, played bass in a band for a little bit there. So kind of a jack of all trades, master of none with crafts, but just meaning to say that I love to create and explore and try new things and be curious. So that's a little bit about me. So now moving into extension and extension forestry. So just to give you a little bit of background on how extension came to be, it was created or established through the enaction of 3 different pieces of legislation through the late 1800s and early 1900s. Pardon me, I'm a policy nerd, so I do have to go through the acts. We've got the Morrill Act of 1862, which was signed by Lincoln and basically established land grant institutions across the United States and effectively seized about 11 million acres of land from indigenous peoples across the country, including 90,000 acres here in Oregon for little to no compensation. Oregon State University took that land and sold most of it to get the funds to build up our university. And so I think it's important to recognize that ugly part of our history, but it is a foundational part of our history as well. And so I think it's important to bring up. The Hatch Act is what established educational research farms across the country, and it was kind of like an introduction to what extension would be and bringing the research to the community. And then finally, the Smith-Lever Act is what established cooperative extension systems across the country. And so what exactly is extension services? I like to think of extension services as the interface between the public and the awesome research that's happening at our esteemed land-grant university. And for Oregon State University and Forestry, that means the public having access to the #1 forestry university in the nation and the top 1% in the world. So I think that that's a really, really meaningful space and privileged place for me to be in. The Forestry and Natural Resources Extension Program, or FNR as we call it internally, was established in the 1960s to support the growing timber harvesting industry that was booming at the time. Since then, forestry has changed drastically. We no longer perform our harvest based on sustained yield. We do it on ecological forestry. There's been a mindset change about and a holistic view that has now been taken on about forestry and natural resources, and extension now reflects that as well. About half of our extension foresters, including myself, are more so on the social sciences, natural resources, wildlife side of forestry, whereas the other half is more on your classic timber harvesting, forest engineering, silviculture side of things. Not to say that we don't all have that wide breadth of knowledge. We're all generalists here, and I do have that background as well. Just meaning to say that forestry is now more holistic than it once was. It's not just timber harvesting anymore. And then our forestry agents, F&R is not just forestry agents. We've got statewide specialists, we've got program coordinators, but our extension forestry agents are your county level informal educational resource on all things forestry and natural resources for your specific region. And so what does that mean for Central Oregon? So this here is the Central Oregon region. The RAC cards that I gave you also has this map on there. As I told you before, I covered Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson counties and the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. As you can see, the reservation kind of creeps into Wasco County, and Wasco County does not have an extension forester, and so kind of unofficially me and the Hood River extension forester kind of unofficially take questions from the smattering of forest landowners on the edge of Mount Hood there. But like I said, on any given day, I'm in Prineville, Lapine, Sisters, or Warm Springs. So I'm all over the place on any given day. And I should also note that on the east side, we've got 4 extension foresters. We've got John Punches in the northeast corner, Jake Putney in Baker and Grant counties. And then most recently in July, we hired Kirane Gade, who covers Klamath and Lake counties. So we've got a full house on the east side for the first time in like 5 or 6 years. So what are my responsibilities as an extension forester? They are ever evolving and changing. I put this first one up here, context and relationship building, because it is what my job, it's something that's ongoing throughout my job. And it's something that over the last several months has been a pretty critical part of my job. As extension foresters, we don't just swoop in with a predetermined set of curricula to say, I have to teach you these things in this lesson plan by this date and make sure you know these exact things that the state and university is making sure that I tell you. No, I come in here and I listen and talk to you all, and I have some landowners here who I've met before and learned from to hear from my communities about what their unique forestry and natural resources related needs are. And that's going to be different for Central Oregon compared to Douglas County, compared to Baker County. That's going to be different between Bend and Prineville and Warm Springs and Camp Sherman too. And what programs I deliver and how I deliver it is also going to be different based on those communities. And the only way that I can make sure that I deliver the most effective and useful program for my audiences is to make sure that I do this context building, relationship building, needs assessment first. So that way, again, whatever content I am delivering is going to be well received and again, useful. That's what I really want. Next, really essential in the extension forester responsibilities, local landowner support. That's pretty critical. I get phone calls from folks just asking me why their trees are dying, to come check out their property, to give them advice on how to make their forests more wildfire resilient or forest health resilient. Or maybe they have a cheatgrass problem in their forest ecosystem and they'd like some advice on that. I got a guy who called me about termite that was in his wood furniture that he had imported a little bit ago. I suppose I was the best person in extension to cover that, so I did. So it's really any number of things, but local land, I'm really here primarily for the private forest landowners of any acreage. That can be from our folks in west of Bend who've got 700 acres that they're doing landscape level restoration work on, to our folks down in Lapine who have about a half-acre lot that they're trying to manage their lodgepole and forest health there. I also serve as a neutral educational advisor on several committees. These include both the collaboratives in our region, so the Ochoco Forest Restoration Collaborative, which I also sit on their executive committee for, and the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project, which I sit on their restoration and planning subcommittee. I also sit on the planning team for the Central Oregon Shared Stewardship Alliance, which if none of you folks are aware of it, you should get involved because it's exactly for a lot of folks that are in this room. It's for natural resource managers from all levels of management, so private, federal, state, tribal, all the above, to come together for shared learning experiences, networking, and to hopefully find opportunities for cross-boundary project work. It's a really exciting organization, and I think it has a lot of potential, especially in a region where there are so many players that are doing things all the time. So it's a really cool organization. If you guys have any questions about it, we have an upcoming field trip on October 3rd that I'd be happy to share about. And then finally, I also sit on the project interdisciplinary team for the Branch of Natural Resources up in Warm Springs, which is basically the team, one of the teams where all of their version of an environmental assessment comes through and gets approved by specialists from all different departments, natural resources and culturally related. I also partner with agencies, tribes, and landowners on projects. That's a big part of what I do, whether that's supporting folks with grant writing, whether that is working with, for instance, I just helped write a grant for $80,000 for Warm Springs to co-create an extension curriculum across the Pacific Northwest for tribes across the Pacific Northwest, a professional development curriculum, and also supporting their internship program they have there and getting funding to hire a youth supervisor to support those interns, because currently the person who coordinates that team has literally has 4 other job titles and does not have the capacity to support these kids. And this program is really essential for the long-term staffing capacity of the Branch of Natural Resources up there. So just as an example, but I also help out folks with NRCS projects and partner projects as well. I think also really important, I'm a connector of natural resource management partners. And so being an extension forester, I know, or I will know, all the players. And so I'm the person that if you say, I need to find somebody who's a real expert on beavers in Central Oregon specifically, just as an example. And I'd say, oh my gosh, I know Reese. She's like literally the beaver lady of Central Oregon. And I get you her email and you two get connected and you two work together. I have a real love, even beyond just this job of connecting people who I think would get along well, work together well. One of my biggest bringer of joys is having like one friend meet another friend and then they become friends. So this is like perfect liaising work for me. Research is also a smaller component of my job, but still there. Haven't quite gotten to actually executing any research yet. However, I've got some ideas rattling around in my head for potential projects that could be useful to have local data for landowners, such as about juniper restoration work and cheatgrass invasion after juniper restoration. That's something that's kind of rattling around in my brain. And then finally, first and foremost, I'm a facilitator of forestry and natural resource related educational programs. And so I'm like in this photo here, I'm often in groups outside expressing wildly with my hands about like great landscapes or pointing at that thing over there, or looking at this small thing down here. So that's usually what I'm doing. And as I do more of this context and relationship building and that kind of starts to wind down a little bit, this will become the primary focus of my position. I will be delivering programs to landowners on those needs that I surmised from that time that I spent doing needs assessment. And then I just really think it's important to note that my #1 goal as an extension forester is not to come in and tell landowners or you what to do. My goal here is to give you and landowners the tools and information that they need in order to empower themselves to make the decisions and achieve the goals that they already have. I'm not here to make the goals for you. But if you come to me and you say, I have this goal of making my forest more wildfire resilient, what do? I have a goal of making my forest more resilient to bark beetles, what do? then yes, if it's an if, then that kind of question, that's fine. What I'm not here to do is for somebody to come up to me and say, I just got this property with all these trees, what do I do with it? That's not really my purpose here. I can help you maybe figure out what your goals are that are hidden away that you can't figure out for yourself just yet, but I'm not here to determine that for you, if that makes sense. So just really quick, this is probably my most common question that I've received since starting this job. Why is my tree dying? This, especially out here in Central Oregon, we've got a lot of trees dying all over the place. About half of them, I'd say, are due to hydraulic failure. You know, we're about 2-3 years out from the heat dome events, and it takes about 2-3 years for trees to let you know that they're dead. You know, I like to think of it kind of like Christmas trees where, you know, you go and buy your Christmas tree, it's been cut down for a few weeks at that point and it's still green, and you put it in your house and it's there for over a month and it's still green by the time you put it out. It's dry, but it's still green. And so anyways, that's kind of a tangent, but just meaning to say we've got a lot of residual drought effects still happening right here on the system. But here are some examples from the last month that I've had from landowners across the region of trees that were dying for not for hydraulic failure reasons. So here's a property out in Sisters. We've got this tree with a pretty good lean here, and it's actually more dramatic in person. You can see this one right off the highway when you're driving into Sisters. And you can't really tell in this picture, but the spotting dieback pattern is weird. That's the best way to put it. And if you look closer down here, you can't really see in this photo, you would see that it's breaking off like about 3 feet above the root collar. This is a heterobasidian root rot pocket in here. Found evidence of that. They've got a grove in here that's had about 3 or 4 condos dying every year for the last 10 years. They don't know what's going on. And yeah, there's root rot pocket going on in there. Over here is a photo that I took down in La Pine just a few weeks ago at a home defectance workshop assessment that we were at. But I thought that this was just so cool. These are 3 different lodgepole pines that are showing, each showing a different leading symptom of mortality in lodgepoles in La Pine, which I think is a really excellent example. So right down here, this little guy, it's kind of hard to tell from back here, but he's got kind of a spotting pattern. He's got Western gall rust, and that's why he's dying. This guy right here, he's clearly afflicted with dwarf mistletoe through here. But if you look at the top, you'll notice that it looks like the top might have died before the rest of the tree died, which makes sense because if you look at the tree next to it, it's got some Ips bark beetle that's chomping away down there. So I think that they were first in this tree, they chewed all they could chew and they just fell down to the tree right next door. So I thought that this was kind of a cool example of tree afflictions. And then here is a pondo out in Prineville, South Prineville area, and it's got mountain pine beetle, this pretty characteristic thumbprint sized pitch holes throughout the main bole of the tree. So anyways, just wanted to show you some examples of what I'm seeing on the ground here. And then what does programming have in store for Central Oregon? Again, ever evolving, ever changing as new needs emerge in our community. But I do have some ideas of some programs that I could be delivering in the very near future. Silvopasture, I have this as the top one because I'm thinking this is probably something I'll be delivering sooner rather than later to some communities up in Warm Springs and Crook counties. Silvopasture, for those who are not familiar, is essentially the active management, of both livestock and trees to maximize the benefits of both. And so this can either be thinning a forest to encourage more forbs and grasses to grow, or this can be adding trees to an exposed pasture to shade your livestock during a warming and drying climate. Bark beetles, no matter what corner of the region you're in, they're an issue, and management out here is a real quandary. We've got a lot of folks who move over here from the west side where with your slash piles, you can just kind of make your slash piles whenever and leave them out for however long and let them rot. You can't do that here. You leave a green slash pile out in the spring or summertime, and you'll get Ips bark beetle breeding in there, and then they'll just go off into all of your nice and healthy trees in your stand. And so making sure that we're doing proper management to prevent an outbreak is really important. Western juniper management is another interesting topic. This picture is from a field trip that I organized and hosted with the Central Oregon Shared Stewardship Alliance on juniper ecology and management. That was pretty well received. Wildfire and forest health resiliency, always on the minds of folks out here. Lodgepole pine management down in the pine. I've been thinking about doing a forest practices to support first foods publication for Warm Springs. Assisted migration is a topic that I was recently asked to produce some materials on for the area. And then I know that I said that I don't swoop in with an assorted set of curricula to deliver, but we do have curricula available for me to deliver should that we have created for extension statewide that I can deliver to our communities here should the need arise for them. Okay, and so with that, I'd like to shift gears into a taste of what some of that programming might look like with a brief presentation on habitat-friendly fuels reduction. And this is based off of a paper. I have this paper again, a link to it in the chat for folks that are in Zoom, copies in front of folks here if you'd like to follow along. And again, this is a publication that was written by my predecessor, Nicole Strong, when she was in my position. And so hopefully you could expect just as good of materials from me down the line. So just to start, it's no surprise to anyone in this room that forests in the Pacific Northwest were largely shaped by fire as well as elevation and precipitation. Down here in our lower elevation, in our most of our community hubs, we're looking at shorter fire frequency and lower fire severity, anywhere from 5 to 20 years of fire frequency in these lower elevation areas, historically at least. And as you can see on this graph here, that's very variable across our Central Oregon landscape. But when we're thinking about where most of my landowners are, they're typically in this short fire frequency, low fire severity range here. So historic fire systems, when they would go through forests, they did they performed a function of keeping the remaining trees there vigorous and healthy because they didn't have to compete for sunlight, space, water, nutrients, all of those things. It would take out the least vigorous trees and leave the most vigorous ones. It would also kind of naturally create a matrix in our system because fires in our landscape, you know, it would torch and burn severely in some areas. It would do a light burn in some, and it would completely miss other areas, creating this kind of natural matrix of almost fuel breaks and patchy grow back and regeneration that really lended itself to being resilient to fire. And so as an example of what that might have looked like through these diagrams, here is a historic ponderosa pine forest, nice and open. Fire comes through, it torches some of the clumps of trees, but stays low for most of it because our ponderosa's bark is very thick and fire resilient. And as a result of that, you get some natural openings that are created, some natural meadows, allows opportunity for different grasses and wildflowers to grow. You see you've got still got some clumpy regeneration on one side, some more open regeneration on another. And then another forest fire comes through, and again, it'll torch some trees, but then again, that opening right there kind of creates a natural fuel break in there for the fire to come to ground and then remain low and not become a canopy fire and more severe down the line. And so this is what our forest looks like 80 years down the line with two instances of fire coming through it. So on the flip side, with fire suppression, we start to see a real severe thickening of our forest, and this leads to really severe competition between these trees because the amount of resources has not changed, but the amount of straws on that resource has changed. And so now all these trees are out competing one another for resources, especially, younger, more vigorous trees will outcompete our old growth legacy trees because they're just able to take those resources more readily. Also, beetles and insects and fungus and all of those insects and disease are more readily able to travel between hosts in this type of ecosystem. And then, of course, I don't need to tell you that there's ladder fuels out the wazoo in here, and this could very quickly become a canopy fire in this type of ecosystem. And so as another example in photo form, so here's some ponderosa forest that's being left to grow in. And as you can see, as time goes on, this just becomes more and more of a hazardous fuels debacle in here. So as a result of this, oh, and I guess also important to note, you don't really see it in this photo, but a lot of what we've seen, especially in the Ochocos, is we've also seen a composition change of our forest from ponderosas, western larch, with a little smattering of Doug fir to a lot more Doug fir and also true fir, which are less drought resistant. And so they become stressed out more easily. And so they are more susceptible, with this heat dome to insects, disease, which leads to them dying sooner, which leads to them becoming fuels for a next fire. I could go on and on about fir encroachment in our dry forest ecosystems. It's a really important issue. So as a result of this encroachment in our ecosystems and landowners recognizing the risk of that buildup and that encroachment, landowners have been turning to a lot of risk reduction measures such as mowing and mastication, manual removal, thinning, sometimes doing broadcast burns or slash pile burning, which is all great, but sometimes when it's done in too aggressive and singular of a manner, you can end up with a system like this, which is very park-like, and for some might be their goal, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But it is there's not much hiding when we're thinking about in terms of wildlife. There isn't much in terms of hiding cover here. There's not much in terms of forage here for our ungulates. There's not much coarse wood here because all these small diameter trees, there's not as much surface area on their bark. They're not as furrowed as they get when they get larger, which makes them better habitat and nesting habitat. And then also aesthetics, for some folks, this park-like view might be the aesthetic goal that they're looking for. And as your extension forester, I'm all here to support you in that goal. But if you are looking to have more of a historically natural, quote unquote, type of forest look, this might not be what your ultimate visual goal is for your forest. So the good news is that we don't have to choose one or the other. And that's primarily the reason why I love this publication and this presentation, is that you don't have to choose whether to moonscape your entire landscape or to just let things grow for the sake of wildlife. You can have an opportunity to strike a balance between the two and have it all, have the best of both worlds. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. So the best, in general, the main thing to keep in mind is maintaining complexity. Nature is complicated. And so maintaining that as much as you can is what is going to best be able to support a biodiverse wildlife habitat. Your main considerations that you want to have in terms of hazardous fuels is is hazardous fuel load and fuel continuity, both vertical continuity and horizontal continuity of vegetative fuels. And how as forest managers we like to consider this, we call it gappy, patchy, clumpy when we're telling people how to manage for their trees. This is kind of the encapsulation of what we mean by randomizing your tree system out there to make it most attractive for wildlife. And like I said, wildlife benefits from that complexity. We've got a lot of deer who use small trees and thickets and shrubs for feeding and for coverage. We've got plenty of birds who use trees for nesting and for feeding, as well as small mammals. And then other things use, down logs for travel corridors and all sorts of things. So the more, it's the same for plants, right? That I'm sure we all know is as the more biodiverse an ecosystem is, the more resilient it is to disturbance in general. And so being able to support that for wildlife is really important. So before I delve into the specific strategies that we use to and habitat elements that we support in these landscapes, I think it's really important to note for this group that we are not talking about the defensible space around your home. We are not talking about within 100 feet of your home. As I'm sure you all know, we've got a whole other list of criteria and recommendations for what to do on your backyard or your landscape within those parameters. These recommendations are meant for beyond that 100-foot zone and more of the forest landscape zone of your home, if you will. The intent of this part of your landscape is to be resilient, not necessarily, again, up to the goals of landowner and their level of risk they're willing to take on. This isn't necessarily, they're not necessarily creating a defensible space outside of this 100-foot zone. So just want to make sure that's clear that we're not recommending putting habitat piles like right next to somebody's window underneath their eave or something like that. So what are the habitat elements that we're going to be talking about? We've got snags, logs, legacy trees, openings, patches, piles, and shrubs or slops for an acronym for folks who like those. So starting off with good old snags, for those who aren't familiar, a snag is simply a standing dead tree. They are excellent providers of nesting and roosting habitat. They're also great loose bark habitats for insects and for birds and small mammals as well. And because they're such great insect habitat, they're also really great feeding habitat for a lot of our insect-loving birds, such as pileated woodpeckers. And it's really cool. About 40% of our forest wildlife will use these forest snags that we have out in our ecosystems. And the bigger the better for these snags. So here are some examples of some natural snags out in the forest ecosystem, some old condos looking all gnarly. You can see how like up at the top of those the main boles, that those would be really great spot for a hawk to nest in perhaps. And I guess that's actually important to note. The reason why bigger is better is because the bigger it is, the more habitat it can potentially provide for wildlife, including maybe perhaps larger wildlife that wouldn't be able to live in a smaller snag. Also important to note that if you don't have any snags on your property naturally, you can mechanically create snags either by mechanically topping the snag or topping a tree, and you can use a chainsaw to kind of make a jagged top that'll make it deteriorate in a way that's more natural and better for birds to nest in. Or you can ask your logger to girdle the top the top third of your tree, so that it'll naturally kind of die and fall off, and then it'll naturally break off and create that random snarly top of the snag. So snag is really important. For exact recommendations on number per acre, we've got that in the handout here. I think it's like 5 or 6 per acre or something like that. Logs, really important for a number of things. They're really important for habitat, again, for insects, small mammals, especially when they get hollowed out on the inside. They're really important nutrient builders and decomposers for our soils. They also make really great travel corridors for amphibians and small mammals. Here's some other really great examples. They're also really great for preventing soil erosion on steep slopes as well. And here's a little rubber snake that would perhaps travel by a log. Our legacy trees, these are our biggest our biggest and brightest of the trees. These are our backbone of our ecosystems. Our big trees hold more habitat, they hold more cones, their bark is more furrowed and so has more surface area and potential habitat. They're just a really important feature, and not to mention, they're often really, really cool looking, so they're pretty nice to have, to keep around on your ecosystem. Our openings, really important for snowpack retention out here, especially out here in the high desert where groundwater retention is a really big goal of ours, and trying to maximize that as much as possible. Our openings and our forest ecosystems really help with that. They also allow for space for sunlight to enter and for wildflowers and grasses to grow, and also more shade intolerant trees like ponderosa pines to regenerate as well. It also creates reduced stress on remaining trees because there are not straws there where there could have been straws sucking up resources. And again, like I mentioned before, this is also potentially a natural fuel break, a place where the fire can kind of come to ground and make it either, make an actual fuel break and burn itself out there, or allow firefighters a chance to control that blaze more effectively. And then clumps and patches. We love our little thickets of trees for hiding cover and nesting cover. Another example there, our deer like it to hide in, our birds like it to nest in. Having little thickets like this is really great. Habitat piles, really awesome for small mammals and quails. These things are constructed not like a typical slash pile. So you start here with some large diameter, a few layers of large diameter logs. And you crisscross those on top of each other, log house style. And then you cover that up with smaller brush and vegetation. And then you end up with something that maybe looks a little bit like this. And the ultimate goal of this is to create a pile where there's an opening or a den kind of on the inside there that the wildlife can access, and then also have that coverage on top. I think it's recommended to have like 5, depending on the size of your acreage, it's recommended to have a few of these per acre. If you're looking to support quail in particular, I would put these on the edges of your forest boundaries. So between like where a pasture is and the forest edges is where the quails like to have their habitat piles. And then shrubs. Also a great hiding and nesting cover, but also has the added benefit of being a great food source for a lot of our wildlife as well. And pruning, also a really effective method of hazardous fuels reduction that doesn't jeopardize too much habitat. That being said, you don't have to prune every single tree. There are some species that like that low branch habitat. And so being able to support some of that on your landscape is definitely recommended. I would just say that if you have, per se, a spruce, for instance, is the first thing that's coming to mind, that has the big sweeping skirts that hit the ground. You don't necessarily want vegetation in like the drip line around that tree for like 1.5 to 2 times that tree's drip line. And again, just making sure that we're avoiding continuous fuels horizontally, and then making sure we're pruning in the fall or winter, especially for our pines. If you prune in the spring or summer, that's when Sequoia pitchmom likes to swoop in and lay her eggs, and that's why our ponderosas and our pines in general in Bend look like they're bleeding to death sometimes during the summertime. Notice that. And then prescribed burning, not as popular of an option for private landowners, but is still accessible to them if they have the acreage and risk and liability and support to do that. Burning is, as I'm sure all of you know, it's a blunt tool, and it can kind of create this randomized matrixy effect if silviculture practices have been done ahead of time to support that. And so this is definitely an option for folks if they're interested. Folks in this room know you talk to ODF or your state fire marshal, local fire department to ask about that. If you do perform a prescribed burn on your property, it's just recommended, if you want to support wildlife habitat, to dig fuel lines around your snags, logs, and legacy trees that you want to maintain. And then important to note that timing is important if you have wildlife on the mind. If you have the flexibility to do so, the time to do so, doing all of this work in the fall and winter is going to be ideal to have the least chance of interfering with nesting sites during the springtime. And then again, just want to finish off by pointing out the difference between landscape resilience and the defensible space. As you can see here, we've got kind of a good example of that. Our recommendations within that first 100 feet are different than our recommendations outside of that 100 feet. And so again, in the defensible space, we're looking for fire to come to ground and to stop before it reaches your house. Whereas landscape resilience, we're just looking for fire to come through the ecosystem, to impact that ecosystem, but for the forest to be able to bounce back and be healthier and more vigorous than it was before. 2 slides on that. And with that, I'd love to chat and see if you guys have any questions about anything. Kind of ran through that. But if you guys have any, feel free to ask me any questions now, but if there are any, particular recommendations on, number of these elements to have per acre, Nicole has them pretty lined up well through here. But yes, any questions about either this that I just presented on or about extension forestry in general? Yes.
Yeah, I got the first one is, when did firefighting get started getting away from the fire suppression, going into where they weren't suppressing it? So
It's been a pretty recent development, honestly, because and it kind of depends on the agency too. I think that some agencies hopped on the prescribed burn train a little bit sooner than some others, as recently as just like a few years ago even. And so I think it depends again on what agency you're talking to. I'd say it started, and there's probably people in this room that know better than me. This conversation probably started happening in earnest on our public lands, at least about 20, 30 years ago or something like that was when these conversations probably about started. Anyone want to correct me on that? Anything else? Any questions from the chat?
okay, I got another question.
Yes, please.
On the snags, I noticed the one that you showed there, you had the snag pile was close to trees. Can they be more out away from trees or something like that?
Oh, the habitat pile?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one,
Like that one right there.
Yeah.
It's pretty close to the trees, so.
yeah, and I guess this isn't a great east side example because this is pretty
I'm just
clearly a west side. Oh, yeah. If this was over here and the recommendations here line them out pretty well, I would say keep that away from the drip line of a tree. I think that's like 2 2 drip lines away or something like that. Yeah, you want to make sure those are spaced out away from the trees, but then it's also recommended to have several habitat piles in somewhat close proximity to one another as well. So like having like 5 in it. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
How are you educating the public more about defensible space? Or a lot of people in those rural areas that don't really know where to go for resources. I see that you guys hold like a couple meetings for some of the, like specifically Lapine community to come and learn about that. And I know you talked about that at the beginning, you guys holding those classes. How do you get that out there so people know about those classes? Or to come and learn about it so they can better prevent their own properties in the future?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say generally, like I said at the beginning of my presentation, how I communicate and how Extension communicates with each of the communities in Central Oregon is very different from one another. And if we're trying to reach out to community in Bend, online social media might work a bit better, whereas in Prineville, good old flyers work really well, or getting on the Facebook page, good old Prineville Information Facebook page works really well. So I think it's a variety of methods. Lapine, if I'm being honest, when we hosted it a few weeks ago, we had a lot of signups, and Dean can say we didn't have too many people show up. which was pretty disappointing, but the folks that come to those, workshops, and I think that this can be true for extension programming in general, they kind of become the spark plug to let the rest of the community know that this is a resource that's available for them. And, you know, a lot of times with this kind of information, it's way more well received by someone's neighbor than if it's coming from someone like me or someone wearing a pickle suit. And so I'd say for Lapine right now, I think that we're kind of banking on that. Especially because I think, Dean, you were actually the one that put it, there's a lot of folks with independent spirits in Lapine. And so I think that this method of, you know, we come in with a program, maybe it wasn't necessarily successful in terms of audience size at the moment, but, you know, those 9 people then go to their neighbors, talk to their garden club, talk to their husband who's a county commissioner. And, you know, the next time we host one of those events through word of mouth, it will hopefully be more well received.
I guess I wasn't speaking just on the Pine, I just saw that you had a class there,
Oh.
speaking in general, but then do you have any marketing material? Like, we obviously serve a lot of places in Central Oregon, we'd be happy to hand out. Cause obviously we don't do a ton of defensible space outside of like that 100 feet inside of, you know, your home area. We'd be happy to hand out some of your, you know, material. How do I get that material to hand out to people in different areas?
Me. Yep, and I will print out anything and everything for you. I've got, we work really closely with the Oregon Forest Resources Institute, which is a state institution. And so, for instance, in this handout that I gave you, the guy who wrote this opening statement, Stephen Fitzgerald, used to be my predecessor in this position way back when. And so we, a lot of extension folks coordinate on these materials. And so if you ever, like, if you go onto the O3 media library that they have and you find publications there that you'd like to have for folks, you can reach out to me and I can order you a bunch.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, my coworker has a question.
Oh, well, I was just gonna, first of all, my name is Ariel Cowan, if anyone there doesn't know me. I'm the regional fire specialist from OSU Extension, and I, along with many other partners, help host those workshops that you were referring to just now. And I couldn't tell who that was in the audience who was asking how you can share them out more. Sorry, who was that?
Megan from Central Oregon Tree Experts.
Oh, awesome. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being interested in sharing those out. I just want to give everyone a heads up that a lot of the time we share out these flyers through Project Wildfire, we send them to Corinne and she's been wonderful to share them out, but also that we have a committee called the Central Oregon Wildfire Education Group. That's actually a subcommittee of the Fire Prevention Co-op. And that's a space where a lot of us come together who are interested in outreach and education on all of those topics. It's open for others to join. And that's where we come up with some of these ideas on workshops. And for example, some of the wildfire preparedness fairs that happened earlier this spring. And, you know, through that network, we also share out a lot of the work that we do and come up with ideas on how to get more people involved. So just wanted to give you all a heads up on that. And if anyone's interested in that group, you can reach out to me. I can put my email in the chat. Or there's also that, Jenna, you brought that rack card, right?
Sure did.
Awesome. Well, that's another way that you can get a hold of either of us. Oh, and Heather put in the chat, we have a workshop interest form. So that's one way that we try to gauge people who are interested in that topic on defensible space. And we end up talking a little bit about wildlife friendly fuels reduction to folks who are interested in that topic, who attend and ask questions on it. But yeah, that workshop interest form, people can just say they're interested, their location, what time of the week or what day of the week or time of day works best for them. And that helps us to figure out where to do those workshops next. if there's enough interest in that area.
That was also shared in the Project Wildfire newsletter that went out on Friday. You're not on the list for the Project Wildfire emails. Talk to me, I can get you on the list.
Yes, Dee?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. You want one at a time?
Please.
Okay. Driving here this morning and coming up over Lava View, reminded me again that, the public lands, a lot of times, the stands are all the same size. And, in that one photograph you showed where it was like, almost like a universal kind of spacing and stuff. And so when they are doing forest management, mostly Forest Service, is there a shift towards creating a multi-age, multi-size stands with some openings instead of just mono kind of thing? Because as they grow, they'll still all be the same size.
Yeah, no, it's a really great question and something that's certainly been on my mind. And I think it comes down to management differences on the private scale, which is kind of what this publication is about, versus on the public land scale. And the project sizes that the Forest Service is dealing with is unfathomably much larger than what any one landowner is typically doing on their property when they're enacting these elements and pursuing uneven age stand management and thinning. Unfortunately, I think that if you were to talk to any resource specialist and certainly silviculturist in our national forests out here, they would love to do this, one tree at a time, single tree approach to stand management, but it's just unfeasible at the scale and pace and number of staff or lack thereof that they have. And so I think that that just makes it all the more important for private landowners who have the capability to take that thoughtful, smaller scale approach. I think, and with multiple reentry, I think that is, I think that's really essential, especially, butting up against public lands that aren't able to manage necessarily in the same way. So I don't think it's a matter of not wanting to, Dean. I think it's just a matter of, we're talking about a real landscape scale management here. And what can we do with the time that we have and the resources that we have?
And if I can add on to that a little bit, like the drive from like Lapine to Bend, a forest might look a certain way and for a certain reason. So with the Forest Service, there are internal divisions between what the staff do. You've got silviculture, you've got people that work in fisheries, you've got folks that of course have the forestry backgrounds, you've got folks that work specifically in recreation, in wildlife. There are wildlife techs that work for the Forest Service. So certainly you might pass a project that looks like the kind of monochrome, like maybe they're building a shaded fuel break there because it's close to a community. And yes, it is that prescription for that area, but there are areas where they focus on projects. They bring the fish people in. Okay, we're really close to this creek or this river. Let's get the weigh-in from the fish folks. Let's get the weigh-in from the wildlife folks. So they do have a very diverse background of people working for the Forest Service and different agencies. I know that BLM does the same thing, that weigh in on these projects. And I'm sure that, one 500-acre lot, depending on where it's at, looks completely different than another and for specific reasons. So.
Yeah, and I Thank you for adding
Yeah.
that. And I'd also add to that, sorry, I'll just add really quick that those are probably also fuel breaks, right, alongside roadsides. And so that's got, again, like you were mentioning, it's got a particular management
Shaded
goal.
fuel break.
Yeah, it's got a particular management goal there. Which I will just kind of note in the publication here, as I was reading it over last night to review before sharing with you. There is something in here that talks about gappy patchy clumps. And keeping them along, like making sure you have those clumps along roadsides and on ridge tops. And I was like, that goes against like all the shaded fuel break stuff. And so again, it's just, when you read over that, it's just a matter of what someone's personal goals are for their property and the risks that they're willing to take on. What was your question?
I just wanted to add on as a kind of a, I don't know, a historical person who used to work for the Forest Service at this point. That I think one of the things that Dean has seen is the effects of historical treatments that changed back in the day when it was all about sustained yield, and the goals were very different for the forest. About, in the 50s and 60s, about maximum production of fiber and specifically boards for housing. That led to very different goals than what the goals for forest management are today. So that left a lot of the east side forests, especially close to the travel ways, very different than, very much not having the kind of the full suite of what you can do, because you're limited with what the going into that the condition was, the anti-up condition, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And on the east side, we're less able to glop and scatter and leave things on the ground and stuff, because it doesn't just deteriorate and turn into wonderful soil. It just lays there for decades and waits for a fire.
Yeah, very clearly the east side ecosystem, is driven by the frequent fires versus the west side where it's every 300 years or something. But they have 60 inches of rain versus our 6. Obviously that's going to cause us a whole different suite of ecosystem constraints to have to work.
Yeah, and a good point too, that it takes a lot of thoughtful planning and consideration to be able to treat the landscape that way. And when you're dealing with millions of acres of public land and a real need to reduce catastrophic wildfires, I mean, you have to weigh everything. But
It's all a matter of balance.
I thought it was a question where they asking, because I wasn't sure how
Yeah, no, it's a
how
great
the
question.
awareness is you're talking about, like maybe 20 years ago, the shift started going from wood sales, for lack of a better way, to more, I mean, in this area, there's so much recreation, for instance, so people value the values change. So my second question is more for the private lands. I think all this material is really wonderful, but if you're talking about beyond the 100 feet, that, this Project Wildfire, so it's more fire centric. So a lot of people are concerned about defensible space and fire adapted landscape that's immediately around structures. And so very few people have beyond that. A lot of people have a fence line that might be considerably less than 100 feet.
For sure.
So so I'm thinking that maybe some of the value in these kind of guidelines would be for like to have like common areas. Maybe they could use some of these kind of principles to help guide how they treat a larger area that's maybe not so close to the home.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea.
It's in South County, most of the properties are half acre or acre.
Right? No, for sure. I think that's a really excellent idea and way to use this publication that I hadn't considered before. Another thing to consider if you have smaller acreage is to look at your neighbors and see what you can offer on your property for wildlife that maybe your neighbors cannot. So for instance, if you're in, dense lodgepole pine thicket country and all of your neighbors have these dense thickets, maybe your benefit is cutting a bunch of those trees out and creating a natural opening in your backyard. Maybe it's a habitat pile. Maybe you create, your one habitat pile on the edge of your property. Maybe you have one snag. You create a snag in your property because you notice that there aren't any in your adjoining properties for your neighbors. So I think that as long as you're creative about it and you think big, think beyond your own boundary, that there's opportunity there to utilize these. But thank you for bringing up that point about communal spaces. That's a really interesting application.
And I think Gregory's community is kind of fascinating in a way, because you just drive through, you can see all the individual properties, but there's a really strong contrast between one property and another, how they want to treat one property would just be like completely overgrown, you can't even see through it, and they don't want to touch anything because it's natural, and it might be right next to one where they've just taken out everything except the very largest trees, and then have grass everywhere else.
And they might have done that because their neighbor was letting everything grow. They said, oh, we gotta go a little bit extra with our home defense. They might be torching.
But I found that kind of interesting that, each property owner has kind of like a different values, and, even the ones that are taking action on their property, they're doing it in a very, very kind of fashion.
Questions?
Do we have any questions online? Kevin?
Hey, yeah, just real quick, just remember, you can have defensible space and manage for wildlife simultaneously. I mean, there are things you can do within that area, especially with some of your shrub cover and your down wood and even potentially snags too, especially in that 30 to 100 foot area. So keep that in mind. You don't have to remove every bitter brush out there, or every log on the ground. There's ways to kind of create some of that habitat out there, and provide defensible space. So consider that when you look at your own property.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for pointing that out. I didn't mean to neglect that point. Yes, you can certainly incorporate these elements into these habitat elements into your defensible space, just following the spacing guidelines that you have for vegetative islands within those boundaries would be recommended. But no, certainly don't want to say that you can't have none of that in your defensible space, so you can watch the quails run around.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Jenna, for that presentation. It's informative, and it's nice to get to know who you are. Ariel?
Yeah, sorry, this is Ariel again. I just wanted to say, we're so fortunate to have Jenna an extension and here in Central Oregon. If any of you know, that position was vacant for a couple of years, and we're just very lucky to have her. So please see her as a resource, and she's great to work with.
Hey, sorry.
All right, so I'm gonna go into roundtable. There's some time left for that, and I'm gonna start at the back of the room over here. Have anything to share?
I'm Todd Pepperland with the Deschutes Soil Water Conservation District. I'll probably let my boss tell you everything that's going on with the Deschutes SWCD, but just to let you guys know, we are working with a lot of landowners. We've got a couple groups that we're trying to get together. One just kind of west, northwest of Shetland Park area. So one group that's down by the Pine area that we've been kind of working with. Trying to organize some type of basically education, do some thinning with, and Jen, I know we've been hit and missing a little bit and we need to get together on those. They're starting to come to fruition, which is kind of nice. The other thing too, that I don't know if the folks know about, but the Deschutes Soil Water Conservation District has access to small grants, and these small grants are really, we can use them for post-fire. So if we're looking at landowners that have been affected by some of these big fires and all, we can access some of those types of grants to do maybe some seedings or something like that. We're looking at, closely at how these fires are progressing here in Central Oregon. But it's just something that I think folks don't realize, that they can access the Deschutes SWCD for any kind of like post-fire restoration type of work. So just to throw that out.
Yeah, I can pass today.
Okay. Kevin Robinson with Central Oregon Fire Management Service. Just a little bit about the fire season right now. We're not quite at the end yet, but we're inching a little bit closer, as you can see, with the cooler temperatures and a little bit of increased moistures. But a couple of things with that, that's allowed us to kind of get a handle on some of these fires, which still provide a lot of work to do with the larger ones. But after they become contained, there's still a lot more work to do with rehabilitation. And then we're looking at reducing our fire restrictions, if not eliminating them, and reducing our industrial fire precaution level. So that's still in discussions right now. So we're not quite pulling the trigger on that yet, but yeah. So everything is looking towards we're looking towards it. Finally, at some point soon here, at least the end of our pretty large fire season for us. So.
Megan with Central Oregon Tree Experts. I think the only thing I have to say is a lot of our clients are doing within that 100 feet LFR. I'd love to connect with you and see about more resources, further on. I know that Heart of Oregon is also a really good contact for some of those bigger projects that our clients they're too spendy, but they want to be able to prevent their own space at their own home. I know that we're getting into like pruning season, trying to keep things up in the winter time. We stay pretty busy with that. A lot of people think that we don't work in the winter time, we work just as much. So if anybody needs help in that aspect, we'd be happy to join that. But yeah, I'd love to connect with you afterwards on some information.
So I'm Bob. I'm with the Woodgie Creek Owner Association, and we have a Rural Fire Protection District small grant to do some fuel reduction this fall. We're going to pull the trigger on that probably the first week of October. So what we're set up to do. And so this presentation today was kind of helpful for us because it will help us decide how we're going to, what fuels we're going to rebuild. We have a lot of dead and dying brush, mostly brush removal and forest debris laying around in common areas.
Well, I've got a question because Woodgie Creek Homeowners Association, just up at the Welcome Center, just 2 miles up, you have the level 3 evacuations. Of course, that just put a lot of the people in our neighborhood in panic because we're just 2 miles away from that. And why aren't we in like a level 1? And I guess it's just trying to find answers why we were giving more information around that level 3 evacuation that went up to the Welcome Center. I mean, people were like, shouldn't we be concerned?
Sure, I mean, of course, everybody should be concerned if,
Yeah.
you know, within a couple miles of any evacuation center or the fire, but I wouldn't be able to give you any specifics on it at this time.
Some of it, excuse me, some of it is when they're coming up with the different evacuation levels, Nathan left early, but, they have different blocks and stuff. And I found it kind of interesting because I've been on level 1 standby now for about 10 days. But right across the road from me, they're level 3 and they evacuated. And they asked me, are you staying put? And I said, well, I'm gonna monitor things, and it's still a few miles away. But they have to do that because they just use the road as the division between this section and that section. Sorry. But yeah, I hate to put it again.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
when I saw it, I was like,
I'll pass.
I don't have anything for the group.
Jeff Lower Sisters, Camp Sherman Fire, I would say for us, for the summer, we've been very busy with wildland home assessments. That uptick has happened with all the fires going on, so we were doing those daily, and quite a few of them. I know the weather will probably start to calm those down a little bit for the winter, but we've been very busy with those. And then Stephen Lord, our community risk specialist, has been working really hard. I think we have about 3 to 4 Firewise communities that we're working on bringing online, and sisters also, so. Yeah, it's been busy.
I've got an update. Let me pull up our website at COIC. So I run the Central Oregon Wildfire Workforce Partnership, and we have currently just changed our website for the program. And so if you're not familiar with the program, we do fuels reduction work with youth crews. COIC, the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, and the Heart of Oregon Corps both run youth workforce programs. And so we are there to kind of fill in the gaps with resources. So we work with underserved communities in the Tri-County area to do that fuels reduction. And so we've done common land, we've done small properties, we've done up to 20 acres of like neighboring properties along roadways. We've worked really closely with several people in this room that have been kind of those like key community like stakeholders that just know everybody, and they're like, okay, we know where this program would really fit. So I have been the main contact, and it will continue to be the main contact for this, but we've gotten such an influx of project leads from partners that it gets a little challenging to keep up with all of them. At any given time, we can have between like 2 and 8 crews going, doing fuels reduction. And during the winter, we have full-time fuels reduction crews. So we're about to start that up. So we have 8 target areas within the region that we work in. And so all of this information is now online on our Central Oregon Wildfire Workforce Partnership page. And I'm sorry, the screen is really tiny, but we've got before and after pictures on there. We've got links to my contact information. We've got property testimonies, examples of the work that we do. And so for every single project that could be a potential project lead, I'll go out and do a site assessment with each owner and come up with a scope of work, make sure that the property fits what our entire program is trying to do. And if everything checks off, we'll have a crew show up and do the fuels work free of cost, because it is a workforce development program for them. So they're getting incredible trainings and work opportunities after they go through. We've had some youth go on and work for Central Oregon tree experts, continuing doing fuels reduction. So there's now an online application that you can fill out. It's just a couple quick questions so that we can make sure before we actually go out onto the property that it would be a good fit for the program. I think it's just like name, what is your wildfire risk? What are you looking to have done? Address, those kind of things. And so if you're interested in the program, that is now available. And we're just going to continue to compile different project leads. And I'll reach out to you. We check these on a weekly basis. So usually there's a little lag time But hopefully this will help us prioritize our projects in the different areas so that we can line crews out between organizations, and make it a little more smooth. So, I apologize if any of you have tried calling. My voicemail box is usually always full. I cannot keep it, cleared out. I get calls and emails, so, that's why we went to this online application to try to smooth that process out. So yeah, my contact information is on there, and if you have questions about it before filling the application out, feel free to shoot me a text or give me a call and I'll do my best to get back to you.
Offering opportunities for a win-win situation.
Yeah, the youth opportunities are pretty awesome. So we've served just about 440 youth in the last 2 years. So the youth on the Heart of Oregon side are AmeriCorps, so they're also giving educational stipends. They're getting paid just like a regular job. But we have wraparound services. So a lot of times we're working with youth that are experiencing different barriers, whether that's living beneath the poverty line, haven't been able to get a driver's license. So we work with them on those things outside of their daily work to make sure that they've got everything they need to be able to show up to work and do a full work day. So it's a really cool opportunity for them. And on the COIC side, those youth crews are getting continued education. They're also getting paid for the work, but they're either working on their GED, they're getting high school credits for those opportunities. And we send them through chainsaw certification trainings. We send them through home ignition zone training so they know why they're doing the work. We also send them through the red card certification training so that they can move on from the program and go fight wildfire if that's something they're interested in. So that takes their opportunities from Central Oregon. We can, a lot of them choose to go work for ODF or local contractors and stay here in Central Oregon. But it also opens up opportunities nationwide for them. So we had a youth last year go fight a wildfire after he graduated the program. His first fire was in Canada, and he was just like, this is so cool. This is crazy. So it offers really cool opportunities for the youth as well.
No updates.
Right, I'll make it really fast. Jenna, it was great to meet you. And yeah, I'm Erin. I'm the manager for the Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District. And as my coworker Todd said, we do have small grants, and in addition to post-fire recovery, they could be used for upland health. So they could be used for forest health improvement projects. And like Todd said, he's pursuing grant opportunities with ODF to do some education with private landowners. And it was interesting, Jenna, like seeing your presentation. It's like, how do you distinguish the Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District from OSU Extension? I think we're very similar. We overlap in a lot of ways. We work together really great. As Ariel said, it's great to have you. Your position's been vacant for a while. So we worked with Ariel on irrigation with OSU in the past. But I think the big difference is Deschutes SWCD provides technical assistance in addition to education. And then we also provide financial assistance to landowners to get projects on the ground. And I wasn't going to do this today, but I guess I'll just, it's not a secret, but Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District, our board of directors has voted to put a permanent tax levy on the November ballot. And we're asking 6 cents, and I can't really provide any more information besides what we would do with that funding. That is up to my board, but we really want to use that money for projects on the ground. And so for this group, it would really help private landowners throughout the county to do forest health projects, wildfire risk reduction projects. We've worked with landowners more in the WUBI boundary, since the county really just works with defensible space. But I just wanted to present that, and I'd be happy to talk more outside of this meeting with anyone to provide more information about that. So thank you.
And sitting in this meeting for the last couple of years, I got worried about my juniper trees because we have a lot of them on our property. So I actually had Craig Letts. I don't know if I don't see him on there today, but normally he's in this meeting. He came over and did a half-an-hour assessment of my junipers. They've really grown a lot. When you water them, they really grow. And they are getting really tall, but they're all trimmed up. But anyway, so now I have a lot of pink ribbons around a few of them. I really appreciated having Craig come. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I honestly want to take out a few more. But thank you, Craig.
That great branch, Deschutes where it was. right now we've got 3 20 cubic yard dumpsters out and that started in August that 9th and we filled there and they get dumped every week. And they get full every week, so, and it's gonna continue probably for the next 2 weeks, 2 months, but it'll continue.
Right, Ray, you have your hand up?
Yeah, good morning. Ray Meow. At the Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition meetings, we often get questions on how do you get people to sign up for a defensible space assessment? Because that's the first step in getting more fire resilient. And what happened with us is ODF offered us a great opportunity that if we get 50 to 100 people signed up for defensible space assessments, they would go out and look for grants to have contractors actually do the work for the people who signed up. And we after I think a month and a half, have signed up 130, I think now 138 homeowners, and which is almost half of all of our homeowners. The key to the success here is that the homeowner has the final say on what they want to have done on their property, and it's in collaboration with the assessor from ODF or Ben Fire or State Fire Marshal. If the homeowner says, I want to keep this big tree, then okay, you can keep the big tree, but here's what we are saying, think you ought to do, reducing the fuels around it and limit it up a little bit and do this. So the homeowner gets a final written report that says, here's what should be done on their property in order to achieve the goals that the homeowner wants and also have fire resistance. With that in mind, all these people sign up, and I'm glad to say almost half of them or more are people who never participated in our fire-free cleanup in the past. So it really gets people's attention when you're saying, you have the final say. It's your property, you can do what you want with it, but here's what we suggest, and let's agree on what you want to have done. But it's what you want to have done that is the final report. So it just reinforces what Jenna was saying. You work with the people's individuals' goals, and how do you achieve that goal while still having more fire resistant properties?
Kevin?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on a couple things. Thanks again, Jenna. It was a great presentation. Very informative. That field trip she was talking about, the Central Oregon Shared Stewardship Alliance field trip on October 3rd, that is in our newsletter. It's on, it's actually about wildlife habitat connectivity, so very timely. So please look at our newsletter. We also have the assessment sign up there, the community wildfire protection plans, the dates in there. There's a lot of really good information in our newsletter. So please make sure you take a look at that for any information. And then also, I just wanted to touch base really quick on those evacuations that has been happening in the last week or so, especially for Widgie Creek. I could see how that could be a concern. That evacuation came all the way to that area primarily because of Conklin Road, and really trying to keep people out of the woods. It wasn't necessarily because of a threat or anything like that. I understand Widgie Creek, it was pretty far away from the little lava fire, but to keep people out of the woods, which was one of the primary concerns for the team, they did have to create those closures and evacuations all the way to the edge of that Conklin Road. I want to make sure everyone knows too, I am the liaison for the county for these team wildfire incidents too. So if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me and I'll try and get that information to you. I don't want citizens to be concerned about things like that, because we can get that information to you.
Thank you, Kevin. And then I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We've got a few minutes over. If anyone has something quickly they want to share online, do that. Otherwise, I'm going to end the meeting here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There you go. You get Jenna.
First, thank you, everyone.
So,